So let's jump right in. We're going to talk about how much the accident settlements are worth. And I think that's a big question because sometimes somebody could think, well, I'm not going to get a lot of money, so why should I even bother? Which you should bother with an attorney regardless. But can you break this down, maybe starting from the most common type of injury? Because I think you've done 55,000 cases here.
We've helped 55,000 clients get a maximum recovery. And, that happened not overnight, but over 30 plus years. But in the meantime, it's given us a deep, deep well of expertise.
You have a database.
We have a database. We, generally speaking, can give you a pretty good idea up front. We can't guarantee it because no one can predict the future, but we can tell you cases like yours generally resolve for X.
So let's talk specifically about the number one case.
Yeah. So the number one sort of, the most common case that we get is a case that a lot of people might have heard about, like soft tissue. You just don't feel that great. So your neck hurts. Maybe you've got some headaches. Might even have some nausea.
I'm sitting up for those listening because it just makes you. It just makes you realize.
Yeah, it makes you go, oh, what's going on here? What's my posture look like? All those things matter, and so soft tissue injuries are all internal. Okay, and they're the most common because it's not that common to break your arm or your leg or your back or to be knocked out and have a serious head injury. That's not that common. What's way more common is you get smashed at no fault of your own. Somebody else is responsible. You get out of the car, you look around, you're like, my car's messed up, or damn you, you're upset, right? And you're not really thinking about what's happening because you're not bleeding. And you have you can walk and you can talk and you're thinking.
Or other people in your car. I mean, right. That is important. Totally. Sometimes we forget that.
Yeah, it's critical. And of course, and if everyone in the car is walking and talking and not bleeding and has no broken bones, oftentimes they're not thinking about whether or not they have any internal soft tissue injuries. But those are the most common, and they're the most common because they're the least visible injury after most car wrecks, most car accidents, right? And so how do we uncover them? How do we learn about them? We learn about them by making sure that that our clients get MRIs, so that we know what their cervical, thoracic, and lumbar spines look like with some diagnostic pictures. We get them to therapy and or chiropractors that can help them begin that sort of therapeutic process so that the soft tissue injuries resolve to the extent they can. So a soft tissue case, if you get better, i.e. in 4 or 6 or 8 months, you're like, yeah, you know what? I'm feeling all right. That case is worth, could be worth 50 grand, could be worth 100 grand. It really does, though, depend on whether or not the other at-fault driver, the person who was responsible for messing your life up for a while, has sufficient enough insurance. Now, the state minimums in Texas are $30,000, which means...
Wait, I want to roll back.
Yeah.
So what happens if they don't have that insurance, but your injury in this soft tissue, back injuries could happen. I mean, I didn't get in an accident. I got played lacrosse, which was a lot of accidents. It was a lot of accidents.
All game long.
Three ACLs and a lot of back accidents. But my point is that it continues. So what happens? Is there a way to resolve to get more?
So if the at-fault driver has state minimums, we almost always get that amount, and that's $30,000 per person.
Got it.
All right. Many drivers have more, and then if that is the case, but you yourself have benefits, you have your own insurance, and your own insurance covers two very different things, and I don't think everyone really always understands this, and that is you have liability insurance, which is the majority of your premium is related to that. And that is if you run a red light or a stop sign or don't pay attention and rear end someone and it's your fault, that's your liability coverage. That the person that you cause harm to can make a claim against you and you're covered for it. That's the liability piece of your insurance. But a lot of people also add personal injury protection. It's called PIP coverage. They also add underinsured motorist coverage, and they add uninsured motorist coverage. So if you have those benefits, you're paying for them, and you get hit by someone that only has 30,000 or 50,000, and your injuries are worth more than that, if you have those benefits, underinsured or uninsured motorist coverage, you should absolutely let us take it. Let us make sure we get all of those benefits for you. We'll make your insurance company play fair.
And that doesn't mean that you're going to increase, because the first thing I'm thinking is, yeah, that's all well and good, Angel.
Yep,
that's cool, but my insurance is going to go up.
It's not, because only when it's your fault does your insurance sort of, that's the black check mark that everybody worries about getting, and therefore, oh, look, your premiums are going to go up. It's only when it's your fault. So when you're responsible, when you're the at-fault person in a car wreck or a car crash, you're right. Your insurance is probably going to go up. You know why? Because you're now a higher risk.
But when it's not
when
your
it's
fault,
your benefits, when you're paying for the benefits and it's not your fault, it will not move the needle on your insurance premiums.
That's important. So we've talked about soft tissue in general. For listeners out there, we're actually talking to Angel, who is a lawyer. So the disclaimer is that isn't the amount; it is a range.
It's the average amount of money that we recover for people with similar injuries.
Right. So this gives you an idea that it is worth it.
Yeah.
Now let's talk about what is the second most, from a number standpoint, injury that happens in this settlement.
Yeah. So many people that initially have a soft tissue injury, if it doesn't resolve after 5 or 6 months, and then, by the way, these soft tissue injuries sometimes can be an extremity. It's not always just the back. It could be your elbow, it could be your shoulder, it could be your knee, it could be your hip, it could be your ankle. All right. If it doesn't get better after therapy, after the sort of first line medical healthcare folks, the therapist, if you will, if they can't get you better, then the second most common type of injury that we see requires what's called pain management. Now, I think there's some good news around pain management. Everybody listening is probably familiar with the opioid crisis in America. Tragic. It was 25 years of pharmaceutical companies pumping people that had pain, like I'm talking about, that lingered, that stayed around, full of opiates that got many people addicted and killed hundreds of thousands, millions actually, of people over the last few decades. Now, the good news is because the government and private lawyers decided to sort of question whether or not pumping the country full of opiates was a good idea, especially with the addiction component and the resulting tragedies that sort of came out of that. The pain management sort of therapeutic process has moved away from drugs and moved into injectable forms of medication that can relieve these kinds of injuries. So instead of you taking opiates every day, you can see a pain management specialist, and they can do a steroid injection. So an epidural would be your back, kind of like when you're having a baby. But when they put those steroids in, your inflammation goes away. And when the inflammation goes away, your pain goes away. Now, sometimes one injection, you're good forever. Sometimes you're going to have to go back. And if you have to go back, that costs money. And if you've got to go back more than once or twice a year for who knows how long, you better have a good lawyer helping you out, because that's a case that's for kind of ever injury. And we need to make sure that we get not just every bit of the at-fault driver's insurance money, but every bit of your benefits if you have them.
Let me ask you a question real quick before we move on. With these injectables and things, I don't know about listeners or you or anybody, but I don't always want to put stuff in my body. So
Understood.
can we get alternative? There is alternative
there are.
methods, and
There
can we
are.
get that covered?
We can. And yes, people are sometimes fearful of needles. Um,
Well, it's not the needle, just so you know. I mean,
yeah,
I just want to say it's the
yeah,
crap that's in the needle
yeah.
that goes into my body.
I will tell you that. All right. So the first.
I'm not saying
Yeah,
it doesn't work. I'm
I
just
get it.
saying some people don't want that.
The first line of this is what almost every professional athlete. This is like the first thing they do. They want to reduce inflammation. If a NBA player sprains their knee, the first thing that happens is they go to the locker room and they have an MRI done to see if their ligaments are completely torn. In which case they need surgery eventually. But if they're not torn and there's inflammation, the next thing that happens is they get a steroid injection. That's it. And then some of them can even get back on the court that day. Some of them need a week to let the inflammation go down, and all of a sudden the pain goes away, right? So this kind of pain management treatment is super common. And it's probably it's a reasonable fear, but it's probably a fear that is sort of overestimated in terms of like, oh
But
my
I'm going
gosh.
to press you on something.
All right,
I don't want it.
All right, you don't want it.
Can
there
we
are
get
other-
acupuncture and all?
You can. There are other alternatives that don't involve putting steroids or lidocaine or other kind of pain management drugs into your system. I personally don't think they work as well.
I'm just asking for listeners out there who
are. Of course there are.
Because someone could say, well, I'm not going to do that.
Not only that, listen, there's a couple things you can really do, and that is, one, you can continue to do therapy, and sometimes a 2 years of therapy will get you back to normal, right? You can, of course, you can do surgery. I mean, there's always that option, but between you and I, choice between pain management and surgery, I go with pain management first, because you never know with surgeries, right? They're not always successful, and they're irreversible. Once you've had them, you can't just go undo them, right? Pain management is something that if it doesn't work, you don't have to do it again.
So this is an injury that's longer term. We've had some soft tissue. What is the amount, since we're talking about settlement amounts?
So that moves right into the 100,000 plus, and it can even be worth millions. I mean, it really kind of depends.
And it makes sense. These are life.
Yeah.
Like this changes your life.
It does. And you know, I'll give you a personal anecdote. I mean, I actually have a needle phobia. Okay, and yes, all the pain management stuff we're talking about does involve a needle. And when I say I have a phobia, I mean, I can't hardly give a blood sample. It terrifies me. I turn sheet white, and it's like, ah. And anyway, I had a shoulder injury. No, it wasn't a result of a car wreck, but it could have been. Plenty of people injure a shoulder, and they're like, man, it just won't. It's killing me. I can't even. It's killing me. I finally got talked into seeing a pain management specialist, and I totally upfront said, look, man, if we can avoid this needle, I want to avoid it at all cost. And after a further discussion with the doctor, the healthcare provider, I relented. I said, all right, man, it's not getting better. It's been months. I'm going to try it. And he said, don't worry about it. Everything's going to be fine. And I was skeptical. I didn't want to believe him. I'm like, what is this? Steroid? I don't want this in my joint. What if it messes it up? And I finally said, all right, you know what? It's painful enough. It's bothering me. It hasn't resolved. And I was doing therapy. And that's why I was sort of growing frustrated. Like, okay, I'm tired of this. The therapy's not working. I want this done. And I let them do my shoulder, and it was a steroid injection. And the next day it hurt like heck. And then 48 hours later, wasn't hurting anymore. And I'm in year 8. I feel like, I don't know. So me personally, I went through the pain management stuff, and I have nothing but good things to say about it. I realize I'm just one person. I realize, the sample size might not be great enough.
Yeah, well, I mean, full disclosure, I've had with my knee after 3 ACLs. I've had injections, and it can work. I was asking for people
Well,
out there
of course,
who
no,
who
of
didn't
course,
want that.
yeah. You don't have to have it.
But I want to summarize. So you see mostly the majority are soft tissue, and they range from 50 to 100, maybe a buck 50, 150,000 in general. Again,
Yeah.
but these longer term soft tissue things, these could be hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars settlement.
Yep, absolutely. And of course, a surgery to the back or the knee or the shoulder or the elbow or any extremity. Or any
So
part,
what's the
any part of your
third
back.
on the list here?
Yeah.
We've covered one, two.
Yeah,
What's three?
it would be surgery.
Of
Yeah.
anything, soft tissue, bone, whatever it is.
Any part of your back or any extremity.
Well, you could do a broken bone, like sometimes they have to have surgery to put pins and rings in.
I'm actually not talking about those surgeries. Those are surgeries, but those happen usually like at the emergency room. Like that person got so banged up that those surgeries happened before we got involved. I'm talking about cases where, like the next most common case after soft tissue, after pain management is needed, would be a surgical case, and it might be a year later that it's just not fixing itself, and if we get some surgical recommendations and the client's comfortable saying, you know what, I tried pain management, it didn't fix it, the next option tends to be surgery, right? It doesn't happen on that many clients, maybe 10% of our clients, but when you need surgery, you need it. And we don't have clients complain about it. Typically, we have clients say, wow, boy, am I glad I didn't just run off and settle that case, because a year and a half later, I needed that surgery and I couldn't afford it. I wouldn't even have been able to pay my health insurance deductibles. And I'm really glad you guys were standing in place for me. And I'm glad I got the surgery, because now I am pain-free, because that's the goal. The goal is to get the best physical recovery that you possibly can. And yeah, it involves money, and yeah, it involves doctors, and yeah, it involves time and patience and even a positive mental attitude. But if you don't want pain, and boy, let me tell you, pain can mess your life up. If you don't want to have pain screw your life up, then at some point surgery might be needed. But again, it's the number 3 on your list, right? Like most common soft tissue. Next most common, pain management resolves it. Last, most common would be surgery. It's about 10%. And when you need it, you need it. And when you need it and you get it and you're pain free, generally speaking, you're much happier.
And that is in the millions. I think that, to be honest, one of the things that I think about is, if I had something happen to me at no fault of my own and it changes my life, once I'm in surgery, I want to make sure that all of that is covered. But two is, maybe there's got to be, you have to have some amount of money to sort of compensate you for this thing that will never change.
Right. And so, in which case you've got to have a legal team, and here at Angel Reyes and the experts at Reyes Brown Riley, we are going to make sure that we maximize your recovery. And that, will of course be more than just paying your medical bills. I mean, look, no amount of money is going to put you back in the state you were in before this happened, right? But we're going to at least get you a maximum recovery, so that when you do finally sign off on everything, you are in control of that decision of signing off on everything, and the amount of money that's coming to you is one that you're going to have to be happy with. And if you're happy with it, then you'll say, okay, it's time to sign the release, and we'll let you know if that is in the range of what most people get, just because of the expertise we have and the number of cases that we've seen over the last few decades.
So just to summarize as we wrap up, you have general soft tissue, you see 50 to maybe 150,000. Long-term soft tissue is hundreds of thousands, possibly millions. Surgery can easily get hundreds of millions of dollars.
Absolutely.
And that's a type of settlement. You also have on your website a case calculator. Is that right? Can you just talk for a second about that?
I mean, so look, if sometimes talking to a lawyer or someone at a law firm is something that maybe you don't want to do. Maybe you just want to do something quick and dirty and say, do I have a case? What's up? All we need is a few data points. And on our homepage, you will see that we have a case calculator. And if you do the inputs, which are literally like 4 questions, 5 questions, it will give you a range. It'll tell you, generally speaking, that if you're not at fault, you can't be at fault. Okay. We can't help you if you're at fault. So long as you're not at fault, and there is someone at fault that we can find, and has some insurance, and you maybe have some benefits, we're going to maximize that recovery. And that case calculator is going to give you a general idea of what we think your case is probably going to be worth. Now, we can't guarantee it, but we've done this enough. We have enough of this sort of information that that will give you a sort of fast and quick idea of whether or not you should get involved with a law firm that can help you maximize your recovery.
So we're going to put that in the show notes. There'll be links down there for you listeners. You've got an idea of what these settlements can be, and as importantly, how you can be taken care of, and you need an attorney for that.